Yeah, I can hear that one. We're live again. I don't know if it'll show up on my.
Or is this because they're changing their names? Yeah.
It does.
I want to bring that to you. You want to do something else? I know it's actually stop this morning.
By the way.
All right, good morning. Welcome to our Board of Commissioners meeting, and thank you for coming. We'd like to start, as always, with a prayer, a reading, a thought, and a pledge, and anyone who would lead us in a pledge of allegiance. We're asking for volunteers who would like to participate with us this morning. Are there any brave volunteers out there that would be willing to participate? Paul, which the prayer reading or thought? Okay, and somebody for the pledge. Is there anybody that would be willing to lead us in pledge? Oh, we got three. Okay, we'll go with. You guys are. We'll
Go with
Paul.
our military guy.
We'll go with Paul,
Oh, not.
since he was going like this. All right,
We'll see.
we got both Pauls.
Our Heavenly Father, we pause this morning as we come to this meeting, grateful for the opportunity to live in America and in this county. We appreciate the freedoms we enjoy and pray that decisions that are made will be in accordance with that which is best for the citizens that live here. We're thankful to be able to give our allegiance to the flag and to be able to give service to those who are in need. At this crucial time in our nation's history, we pray that those decisions that are made in Washington can be in accordance with that which is best for our country as we move forward. We thank Thee for the service of the commissioners and pray Thou bless them and their families. We thank Thee for all those that serve in the county, that they too might be blessed and sustained in the items of their lives that are important to them. Now we again express thanks and do so this morning in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning. Please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
for all.
All right, thanks to Paul Jones and Paul Warner for participating with us this morning in that. As our agenda goes forward, if there are any items that the public or staff would like to come up and speak on, just come to the microphone and state your name as we get to those agenda items. And then also at the end, we'll have some public comment for general comments at the end. So with that, we'll move to our consent agenda and look that over. I did not have anything on consent agenda that need to be pulled off. Is there any other commissioners have a? Okay. So then we'll move to our regular agenda. Number one, if we could pull, so everything going to the consent agenda except for the items that we will pull off. So number one is one that I'd like to have, that I think they're here.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, they're here. Okay, very good. Number 4. Number 9. And if we could put on to continue for 1 week, number 13, if that's okay with the other commissioners.
It is?
And then hold number 14. I didn't know if Paul, I felt comfortable leaving it on consent for number 12, unless you'd like to speak to that at all, or if either one of the commissioners would like to hold that.
Do we need to hold 6, 7, and 8 just for finding, or can we consent to the findings?
Oh. Yep, 6, 7, and 8, let's have findings on them. Very good, thank you. Are you fine, Paul, with just letting it go on consent? Okay.
Okay.
All right, and then on, so is there any,
Unless you want to make the announcement before tomorrow morning on KSL.
yeah,
What-
this is being
I
live
doubt
streamed
it.
right
You're
now.
well liked.
All right, and then, of course, our closed meeting items, we'll come to those. So any comments on ones that we put on consent? All right. Moving to the ones that we pulled off then. If we can have the trusts, come on up. This is one of our favorite items every year.
And there's always a good reason for that, right? So just by way of introduction, I am Ryan Hatch, and this is Brent Okeson with the Utah Local Governments Trust. And we are, for those of you that don't know, we are your partner for insurance and risk management. And we have been for about 8 years. However, we expanded the scope of our partnership about 4 years ago when we took on your property and liability risk as well. And about that time, the county began to really get entrenched with our loss prevention initiatives and programs. And one of those is the Trust Accountability Program, which Brent is going to take just a minute and talk about. But it's a program that we've put together to reduce losses and keep your employees and citizens safe. And it's something that the county has participated in for the last 4 years consecutively. So anyway, with that, I'll let Brent kind of go over the details and kind of what it is, and we'll present the award.
So we appreciate the partnership here, and part of this Trust Accountability Program is, like Ryan mentioned, is reducing the losses. And the county did a really good job this past year making sure those things happen. I know Dave Shawcroft and Karen Fairbanks and others made sure that the documentation was there and that the applications were submitted. Part of this is having an active safety committee, making sure that accidents are reviewed, doing incident investigations, looking at things that really make a difference for the county to prevent losses and claims and employee injuries and things like that. So there were some really good things that were done. Other parts of that are having a return to work program where if an employee gets injured, they have accommodations for getting that employee back to work quickly, and it really saves on the bottom line for costs in doing those things. Looking at driving records, making sure that the vehicles in the city are driven by employees that have valid licenses and that everything's good there. And so there's a lot of really neat things in this program. We provide insurance for over 500 entities throughout the state, and there's about 90 this past year that took part in this program. we've looked at these numbers, and those that have done this, those 90, they have significantly fewer losses than the others do. And so that's why we really appreciate your partnership in doing this, because there's some really good things that come out of it. As Ryan mentioned, there's some things that go along with this award. I'm going to leave you today with this nice crystal that you get to show off and be proud of for the year. But along with this comes that check for $9,357.25, and that's because we appreciate the partnership. It's really a win-win for both organizations, and we really appreciate you being a part of this. So congratulations for 2016. I'll leave you with this award for the Trust Accountability Program. Thanks, Utah County.
We'll just put this right up here for now. How's that? All right, thanks Ryan and Brent for coming. Let's move to number 4. You can just kind of go down through this, Richard, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about it and we're doing there and where we're at in the process, this long process of 5 years, right?
Yes, it is. Just want me to give you a
Yep.
brief update on it?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
Richard Nelson, Public Works Director. This is a modification to a contract with Project Engineering Consultants. Our consultant has been working on the Salem Parkway, Elk Ridge Drive Connector project, getting us through the environmental phase with the Corps of Engineers. There was some additional work that was required by the Corps on the mitigation and the monitoring side of it that was beyond the scope of what we originally had in our contract with PEC. That's what this change order is representing here. It's $20,000 to do that. I do have some good news. I received a letter from our consultant, or an email from him, that said that they had spoken with the Corps. This was actually as of last Thursday. Spoken with the Corps today, said that they are planning to issue the permit for the preferred alignment for Salem Parkway. We had to make a few minor changes in the document. They have the approval of the Jason Gibson, who is the director at the Corps of Engineers here in Bountiful, and it should take them about 60 days to actually have the permit in our hands, but it is being written.
Okay.
So
Are you knocking on wood on that? Because we've heard that before.
this one where they're actually saying that they are writing it instead of, oh, we need more information. So,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
we're very hopeful that it's actually in process. And
Okay, that is great news, and hopefully we get that so we can get going in our construction season.
we're anxious to start moving on it.
Okay, very good.
And especially on the preferred alignment that is the place that we wanted to build the road in the first place. So
Oh, that's even
So that's
better
good.
news. Yeah, good. Okay. Any other comments or concerns? All right, a motion to be in order.
Move that we approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the amended agreement as stated in number 4.
Second?
Got a motion and a second to approve and authorize the signature of the chair on, as stated number 4 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Okay, 6, 7, and 8. We've got some
We have to do those all
veteran bait.
separately, correct?
abate-
Because of the findings. Okay. Move that we approve the late veteran abatement for Victor Gonzalez with finding that the failure of the claimant to timely file the application was beyond the claimant's reasonable control and to not extend the deadline would be against equity or good conscience.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to approve the late veteran abatement as stated in number 6 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That passes 3-0.
Go ahead if you want.
So I will move that we approve a late veteran abatement application for Ronald Peterson as stated in regular agenda item number 7.
Second.
I've got a motion and a
Do we need
second.
to
I
say
wonder
it?
if we should say that if you
With
just, with the finding.
Okay,
Put the
with,
finding in
okay,
there.
I'll modify that, with the finding that the failure of the claimant to timely file the application was beyond the claimant's reasonable control and to not extend the deadline would be against equity or good conscience.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the late veteran abatement as stated with the findings on, as stated number 7 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
Move that we approve the late veteran abatement for James Prather, hope I said that right, with the finding as stated. Can I do that in number 8? Okay.
Second?
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve the late veteran abatement as stated number 8 with the findings. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye. That passes 3-0. I had 3 ayes in there.
5-0.
5-0, yeah. Okay, number 9 is,
You want Jeff, Cammy? Who do you want?
doesn't, Cammie's perfect.
Tammy Taylor, HR Director. What questions do you have for this position?
The only question is, and I think hopefully it'll be put into the, I understand that elected officials have the option of going with, appointed or merit-based, which has been tradition, to go one or the other. And I would hope that maybe in the motion that we would put something in there saying that it is one or the other. It's not go back to, I mean, we started this in not started, but in 2014 it was merit. Now it's going to appointed. Little concerned about kind of flipping back and forth, but
And
nevertheless, they have that option as
correct,
elected
and we've
officials.
talked about this in my office about adding in rules and regs,
Yeah,
whether it's during the term of someone they can't flip back and forth, or we're not going to be able to override what they're allowed by
Sure.
the code, so they are entitled
Sure.
to appoint someone. All this does is allow the incumbent to have bumping rights in our rules and regs
right.
if they aren't retained.
Well, and
So it
I
allows-
think we need to even look at these a little differently, because some of them, for the reasons stated in the letter from Jeff, the institutional knowledge and the stuff we would lose is important, whereas, with all due respect to my great assistant, some of those jobs shouldn't be merit, they should come with the position. And so,
Correct.
I hope we always analyze them on their merits, as like we are in this case.
Yeah, yeah.
So would that need to be something that we hold till next week?
No,
and
no,
we
no,
write in
no,
there?
no, no.
Okay.
I'm in favor of doing this. I just with an understanding that that if it goes back to there's only one or the other. It is not
Correct.
one and then we add another.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
This wouldn't allow them to have two people
Right.
basically doing the same job. No.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. A motion would be in order. Oh,
No, this is Robert Moore, County Attorney's Office. You guys have the check on that because you'd have to budget for that second position. So
Right.
as long as you never did that, it's never going to be an issue, right?
right.
So really, you guys own that control.
Right, but I think what we're saying is that the position itself is the same position, whether you classify it as
Yeah.
appointed or merit. It's a position of necessity. Sure.
Yeah, I just didn't want the argument coming back saying, by statute, I can get a deputy, so therefore I need a deputy, and we're gonna keep this one in place and add to it.
So,
So we have
if
to
that were
budget
to
for it.
happen, then they would have to do a reduction in force, RIF the
Right.
career service
Yes.
position and appoint.
Right. And then that's kind of the conversation that I was looking for. Did we do a motion already?
Nope.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Motion to be in order.
I will move that we add one full-time career service assistant county recorder position to the staffing plan of the county recorder's office as stated in number 9.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to add one full-time career service assistant as stated in number 9 on the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay, we continued number 13. So now we're to number 14. Event of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I could, on this one, I wanted to try something a little different without any objection from the commissioners and allow for public comment, of course, or staff to, I mean, we've gone through quite an extensive process with this and in recognizing that there's there's emotion and conclusions and all kinds of stuff going along with a big decision for the county. But allowing for staff or any of the others to participate in the selection committee to come and speak speak their mind on what they think we should do, and then give that chance for comment to happen, and then afterwards to pull it up to the bench for us to have maybe some statements. We'll have statements by each commissioner, and then we can have discussion. So it looks like you're staying there for a comment. I would
not.
think you would not.
I have a substantial investment in this decision.
Sure.
First, I wanted to point out that after reviewing both the Workday and ADP supplemental information, I had to dig in a little deeper because I was confused by Workday's inclusion of additional items and whether or not those items would be necessary for our success. It would be my recommendation that if we did select Workday, that we would not add on those additional charges, that would be part of the implementation, and that we ourselves have added a position to be a change manager, a person at the county who will be assigned to lead the super users and to be that resource. So we would not need to outsource that and add that additional cost. So it would only be the implementation cost and the annual subscription. It wouldn't be the
Because you're
additional
talking about
learning credits.
the two different boxes that they had. Because there was,
So in there,
you had the boxes with the implementation and the ongoing cost, and then below it there was also another box of costs
the breakout
down
where they-
below.
the project team 83 prepaid, training credits, learn on demand, adoption kit, and delivery assurance. So we would not outsource that. That would be something that we would do in-house. So we would not add those additional costs. It would only be the annual subscription as outlined and the implementation costs as they outlined it. So that would be my recommendation if that was the choice. And then if ADP is the choice of the commission, I wanted to bring to your attention the difference between the presentation that they gave us and then the information that they supplied on number 7 on the last page, where they
Hold on a
said,
second, let me get
Let
there.
me get there. Okay.
So where you at now? You
number
Page
7,
7.
the potential liabilities. So I know it was of interest to have the county absolved from liability for certain issues. They mentioned FMLA, they mentioned ADA, they mentioned wage garnishments, payroll tax filing, and ACA reporting and administration. The first 3 bullet points, I've invited Robin, who handles payroll, to speak to those. And then as far as the ACA reporting and administration, that is as easy as the information that goes in. The reason it's difficult for us now is we can't pull reports based on hours worked by the employee every week. It's a report that has to be built that we haven't got built. We haven't had
Which
built
either
yet
of these programs would
with the
address
current-
that.
with the current one. But that's something that either vendor will be able to do for us. And the disaster recovery is something that anyone who is administering a cloud-based system should provide for you, and both of the vendors do as well. And then they say in the paragraph right below that, if needed and in an additional charge. So the things that were attractive to me in the presentation was administering FMLA and ADA, which I've been a customer of ADP before. That's who Granite Construction uses for their time off, and they didn't choose to implement the full HRIS system with ADP. But I do know that they charge you for everything that they do. They offer those services, and there are companies that will choose an HRIS system and use ADP to administer payroll or administer FMLA. And so I think here they're making it clear that they do offer those services, which was my understanding, and I feel like it was different from what they said. They said it would be included in what they were pitching to us. But here in writing, they do not include FMLA or ADA, that would be an additional cost.
Especially because they asked us what our percentage was, and when we told them 10%.
Right. It's a lot higher than the industry standard.
And Workday covers us on the FMLA?
The tracking part of it, but we would administer it. We have a benefits and leave person who will administer it.
So I talked with Todd Peterson from Wasatch Mental Health on the ACA reporting and administration. And he says that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And so that's not, it's
We currently use BOSS for it, and we pull our reports from BOSS as far as who has elected it and who's not insured, and then we pull an hours worked report. So the county outlines in our rules and regs, we have 25-hour employees, we have 30-hour employees, and then we have full-time employees. And 30-hour employees and full-time employees are entitled to insurance, and we have three-quarter insurance and full-time insurance currently. We have 25-hour employees who we regulate at a supervisor level, and they're hired for 25 hours. We've had only one area where we do have to watch the employees, and that's the strike team, because sometimes they're called to fires and they work more than 25 hours and it's for a period of time. Those are the individuals who we scoop up, and we've had to offer insurance to typically 1 to 2 people a year. And the ACA reporting, we have that through BOSS currently, and then whichever system we choose, we would be able to pull a report. So this isn't something that we would choose to have a vendor do for us,
but we could,
but we do need the information.
because they take
The
the
difficult
liability
part
too.
is the information. Well, and the liability part is a different issue, because I'm just not convinced that they can absolve of all liability. And if they were willing to sign an indemnification or hold harmless agreement for each of these areas, I guess that would be up to Rob to be able to negotiate that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then looking at the price structure of the contract and the implementation over a period of 10 years, with ADP and Workday being compared to each other, we, at 5 years, we end up starting to realize a cost with the choice of Workday over ADP. And then over the course of 10 years, the savings is $500,000. So,
But our contract is,
pardon me?
only 3.
Well,
The contract.
we
period
haven't
that we're
actually
looking at.
negotiated contract yet.
Yeah, we
but
don't have a contract yet, and what Workday has come back with is that they would be willing to lock in that price for 5 years,
with county
with
option.
an option of us being able to leave at any time. But as far as the price being locked, we would have no increases for 5 years.
Well, no increases the additional 5 years after the increase on year 6, because they went up on their annual fee a little
On
bit.
year 6,
On year
yeah, they go up by
6, they do go up.
5%, and we
And
don't
then they hold
know.
that constant for the remaining 5
next
years if
5
the
years.
county chose that option.
They go up by 5% after
Right.
that each year.
But
Year
we do
6,
have to
7, 8,
realize
9,
we're only
10.
looking at a certain period of time for contract, and so
For
it's
contract,
subjective to anything beyond that, because it's have to be renegotiated.
okay. My hope would be to not go through this process every 3 years, that once we choose someone, we find someone that we like and we find someone
Sure.
we feel like we can stay with.
Just like we do with bankings and check accounts,
Right.
because we haven't shopped that for years.
And locking in a price now for 5 years at our option, I think it's worth considering beyond just the original 3-year term, the cost to the county over time, as one thing to be considered.
Right.
I think it is a factor.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
thank you. All right, any,
Hi, my name's Robin Davis. I do payroll and HR. Was asked to comment on the offers of ADP to do tax filing, wage garnishments, year-end W-2 reporting. Like Cami said, I'm not convinced that they can absolve us of all responsibility, and with a good system, these are not things this is outsourcing. This is still information I'm gonna need to have access to. Tax filing in and of itself is not that complicated or lengthy process, so you're not really gaining much. Along with wage garnishments, again, with a new system or an effective system, we really wouldn't need to outsource any of this stuff. It's not that complicated
So
to.
you think both meet that need?
I think I'm sorry, would you rephrase the question?
Both of ADP and Workday would meet that need, so as far as
So that we
getting
could
rid of the
self-administer?
outsourcing, yes.
Yeah, we
Okay.
could self-administer this with a decent system. I don't think there's an advantage. I don't know that we can actually expect to not be liable for any errors. We're still going to be held accountable by the IRS and by the courts to make sure we meet these requirements. So that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Oh, the chair of the committee.
I was not asked, Robert Moore, County Attorney's Office, I was not asked to speak, but I think I should just, I want you to know that I thought this process has been a good process. I was the chair of the RFP committee on this situation. We had 11 folks that were involved, and we had a couple others that did assist in providing information. We started with 7 applicants, and I think Robert Baxter can attest as to what this as well. We started with 7 applicants. We were able to screen them down to 5. We had presentations, I believe, from 5 applicants. We then screened those down to 3 as part of, and had presentations from 3 additional ones. And now before you, I think today, we have a further screening down, really, with the best and final offers down to 2 from those best and final from those 2 offers, or 2 competing companies. So I feel like it's been a good process. I think we've vetted these systems fairly well. I think that we've seen quite a bit of information. I think you have a hard decision to make. I will note that the committee itself did recommend Workday. I think there was 8 first place votes for Workday. But as
3
I look
for
at
ADP.
3 for ADP, correct. As I look at the cost now with the best and final offers, the costs are really they're kind of 6s for the most part. There's not a lot of difference in cost over the term. Let me address a couple of the issues that have been raised here, if I could. As far as liability issues, that's an issue that I would attempt to negotiate as far as the contract, indemnification, et cetera. What it does mean is that we obviously could be on the hook from the IRS for things, but we could require them to pay that, right? If we have a liability because of something that in violation of our IRS regulations. As far as the term goes, Workday did come back with a term that they would hold constant for 5 years. Our RFP is only for 3. It would be my suggestion and recommendation that whoever you choose, that I attempt to negotiate an option for us to renew at years 4 and 5 at the same cost, whether we go with Workday or ADP. Even though ADP didn't offer that, I would attempt to do that as part of my negotiations. If we were to work with Workday, I would also incorporate term years 6 through 10 at the numbers they set at our option. So it would give the county all the choice here. That would be what I would do as the attorney, to try to allow us to lock them in, but we don't have to be locked in. Certainly in either situation, we're going to be locked in for the first 3 years. But I think from my standpoint today is what we're doing is we're presenting to you the committee recommendation. We're presenting to you that I think it's a good process. I think the candidates have been fully vetted. I think that honestly, you really can't make a bad decision. I think we're all surprised at how it went a little bit, as far as we thought some candidates wouldn't do as well as they did, and they did. And so it's been a good process to go through that. I do think that that as you decide this, it's an important decision for the county going forward. It is a financial investment, and we appreciate your willingness to make that investment in the county, especially relates to HR and what they do. I think it'll make their job more efficient. It'll make their job more workable with the county as a whole. And so I'm excited that you're considering this today. What I'm looking for is a recommendation from you as to which entity I should pursue to negotiate with to pursue a contract, so that we can move this thing forward. I know that once we start that process, we're hopeful to try to work it towards the end of the year, at least on some components of it, and try to finalize that. And it takes a while to implement these things, as you know, as you're well aware.
Right.
So I think that's what I'm looking for today, is for you folks to accept the recommendation. Whether you choose to go with it or not, it's up to you. That's your prerogative. And also to give us a recommendation as to which entity you would like us to negotiate a contract. I will then do that based upon the responses to RFP and their best and final offers, and I will try to tweak a few of the terms potentially, and I'll put that on your agenda is my hope. As early as next week, but it could be depending upon how it goes.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do.
So a lot of times, it's subjective and it goes back and forth on how people feel about stuff. And so I usually go down right back to what's actually in writing. It helps me to clarify. So I'm going to read a statement from ADP as we're talking about the risks, the liabilities, potential liabilities, and the above, all that's on there. And they state this in writing. ADP takes on the liability and risk of performing these services, talking about all the services above, and it is a core of our offering as a payroll provider of over 600,000 organizations and filing over $1.5 trillion annually in taxes to the IRS. So that statement's pretty strong in the way of liabilities that they would take on and that they would do when we're talking about filings or ACA or year end or anything, or even before, as part of their core. They deal with $1.5 trillion annually dealing with the IRS. It seems to me like it's a pretty strong statement in the way of them saying, this is what we do and this is who we are.
Sure, and I think what that really means is this. If we get a claim, it would never come against ADP. The claim would come against the county,
Sure.
as you know. And so we would then seek ADP to indemnify us. That would be part of our contract, certainly. And that would require them to potentially defend us. It would also require them potentially to pay for any out-of-pocket costs. And that would all have to be in the agreement. Now, I will note in the RFP response, they did have some of that information in there. That was a thing that we discussed during our committee, and the questions were asked about that. And that was a selling point for them, is that
Sure.
they absolve or take some liability upon themselves, particularly related to payroll. I think that's really what they're talking about, and I think they've kind of limited it to that component of it. But
Sure, but don't we have that in our current contract? The answer is yes, because I'll tell
okay.
you why. The problem is then what you get is you get a supplier that then tells the county, well, that was your error. The information was put in by you.
that is an issue.
So it's your error. And that's the same thing that all of these companies do. Yeah, they'll indemnify as long as we put in everything in correct and use their system correctly. But the problem is that's where all of these errors occur. It's not their program error, because I'm sure ADP's program and Workday's program, they fix those bugs.
And that's an issue with of course you're going to try. Most companies tried to deny liability initially, as you know. And
Yeah, we have the same
way it
issue
works.
with our current one.
Correct. I mean, that's how it works. And so we would have to show that it was in fact their error. And that's why I said, but either way, the claim's going to come against the county, right?
Right, right.
Just because ADP's our provider or Workday's our provider, they're not going to sue either one of those companies. They're going to sue Utah County, and then we would have to deal with that directly.
So question kind of along that same
Please.
thread. Historically speaking, how often has this been an issue for the county?
As far as issues related to our payroll,
Yeah. Where there's significant liability potential
give
back
that
to the county. That's
I just asked Sarah that. Sarah's worked the longest. She's been here for 23 years. And I asked her, and she said one time for filing late, not for, you can.
We had penalties that I can think of for filing late one time.
so this has been an issue one time in the last 23 years,
22.
22-ish. Okay, thank you.
So Rob, going on that question again, it says wage garnishments administration, year-end W-2s, 1094s, 95s print, and administration. They're attacking on, the administration is a big part of this. It's not just that they're going to say if you're following our program, because they're also part of, ACA reporting and administration. So there's a liability that's a little bit more than just
and that may be the case.
typing in the numbers.
when we go through that and make the argument again, the final contract will contemplate what that total scope of the liability is going to be.
Right.
And what they would be indemnifying us for.
Now, if they just said ACA reporting, and we do the administration of it,
Yeah.
then that's a whole different conversation, but they're saying both sides of the
As you
equation on it.
recall, at the actual presentations, they said they would be doing the administering potential of that was one of the options, administering of W-2s and these kinds of things. So, but I do, if I recall, there may be an additional fee that was associated, at least with the W-2s.
No.
That's an initial offering that they came. Now, the best and final may slightly modify that, but there was I think a 5,000, but that was if they were going to send it out and things like that. But yes, when you're talking about garnishments and those kind of things too, that's something that they have agreed to take on liability for, and so we would put that in our contract.
Again, for a software malfunction.
And administration. That's
They are not going, if they're doing it.
well, the administration means they're administering the program.
Yeah.
Right. So why do we have our
Well,
staff doing it, I guess,
The
is the
real
question.
question about how good a liability is not until you actually have a case. Then that's when you question it, honestly. So.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
And then
I still keep going back to my Tommy Boy quote. I
mean,
guarantee Ferry's showing up on your pillow, so.
Well, with them administering or working with 600,000 organizations.
Well,
you
they're
know,
definitely a big company. There's no
it's
question
not,
about
it's
that.
not that this is fly by
They're
night.
financially solvent to handle these.
Sure.
Well, and then I'd also like to clarify, they're a payroll provider. This is a service that companies elect to have them administer their payroll.
Sure, that's how they
So they
started.
send all their time entry to them, they cut checks, they do payroll. So that would be outsourcing one of our employees' functions. And they're not willing to do the whole payroll system, they're just willing to do garnishments and W-2s and tax filings. Tax filings. So tax filings is just uploading a file to the site, and that's an integration. So they're willing to take our data and upload it, do an integration, or it's something where we would have an integration, so every week it would upload to their site. And then the wage garnishment, Robin could speak to how many of those we have. That's getting a letter and entering it into our payroll system. And then the W-2s, we won't be printing and administering all the W-2s with any system we have. We are going to do an electronic system to have employees be able to go online if they want their W-2, or they can elect to have it print and mailed, but we're not.
Hopefully, because this year
mailing
wasn't
all of
fun.
them
That
like
now.
we did this year.
Yeah. Right. Okay, others? Okay.
Hi, my name is Robert Stevens. You may know me as a developer of land, but in actuality, I'm a computer scientist. I'm different than most because I've spent the last 2 decades developing web application software and thinking how I can do it for either free or almost no money at all. So this may go and take the wind out of your thinking. I mean, it's easy to go spend millions of dollars on things, but it's also, there's also a possibility of you spend either free or far less than $1 million. So most startups that will succeed on $600,000 or less within 6 months. Most, if not all, software that is used widely in the world has a free open source version of that, at least one free open source version. When you're choosing software in a corporation, if you have lots of money, then you go and talk to all the big players. If you don't have lots of money or you don't want to spend lots of money, then your approach is different. The Mormon Church, for example, on their genealogy software, has employed a couple hundred individuals for 17 years at a cost of nearly $1 billion. And their CTO, who was there for 2 years, said, "That's enough. This is a zoo." And so he quit. In 1 year, he rewrote the entire thing himself. A one man, 1 year. And I'll be glad to give you all the references on that, and you can go out and play with the software. It's in beta testing right now. So software has developed now to the point where you can do large-scale things by yourself. When you make a monolithic application, like ADP, then you offer hundreds of features for the minority and power users, which most likely your organization will use maybe a couple dozen. If you really narrow down, what exactly do you do most of the time? It's probably only a couple dozen things that you'll do. And then you say, well, if there are more in minority situations, is it possible to go save money and do those by hand? And if we do it by hand often enough, and it justifies the cost of adding the feature, then you can add the feature. So I would suggest that, one, before you go out and spend lots of money, have people who think in this kind of mindset to investigate this. At the very least, you could ask, is it possible to go ahead and create the software ourselves? Is it possible to go and keep it in Utah? What kind of data is being uploaded to the IRS and other entities? And I can tell you, if ADP is connected into the IRS, then those application programming interfaces, or APIs as they're known, are widely known and documented, and they're easy for someone to go and connect. Every single year at Brigham Young University, 1,000 students just in winter semester alone have to complete an internship on campus. I'm over a dozen students right now in the information systems or CS or IT department. They would love to go take upon a project and sit down with your employees and figure out just exactly what they're doing, what their needs are, and go out and do a free investigation and find out what's the cost-effective way you can do this. Is there anything you want to ask me, since I'm an expert in this field?
You know, it's interesting, Robert, because I used to be able to work really well on cars, but now that it's so computerized, I can't work on them like I used to. And sometimes when it comes to software stuff, I personally look at that and think I have no clue what's going on. And I was talking this morning with an individual, and we were commenting on how expensive software is getting. I mean, it's getting expensive to buy software programs. We've gone through a process which has been kind of painful on a software program basis.
Yeah.
Kind of painful is probably a mild statement. And so we're getting to the point to where the car isn't functioning properly, and we're pushing it sometimes down the road.
Yeah.
And we're looking at doing an investment into the future, which I think this is an investment. I mean, it's an interesting process that we've gone through. I mean, we all came with preconceived notions to a certain extent, and we're moving through it, and we're wanting to find something that will allow us to, jump in this car and actually get down the road and do so in a safe, in an orderly fashion. And so there may be programs out there. If there are, I'm surprised people aren't trying to sell them or be the middleman in between. But I think that's where we're at, is we're just trying to find some place to get us moving, because we've been in this stuck mode for a long time.
Yeah, if you want to choose an OS, you can buy Windows, or you can get Linux for free. If you want to get a spreadsheet, you can order Excel or a Word processor. You can buy Word, or you can use OpenOffice for free. And so where there's an opportunity, there will be developers out there making things. I'm not acquainted with this aspect, but I bet you in an hour I could come up with some really, really good free solutions that are being used by millions of people and corporations around the world. So if you want to go and spend a few hours in looking at that, I'll be happy to do this for you.
The problem is on the timeline of implementation and with our system and the liability, the county's actually at great exposure right now. And so we don't have, unfortunately, the courtesy of time right now. This has been a problem that started well before any of us three ever got here, quite honestly, and we're trying to create the fix in the best and most meaningful way we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, though.
Appreciate your comments.
Brandon Chambers. I'm here in Human Resources here at the county. and just wanted to share just a quick experience that I've gone through looking at this process comparative to my former employment, which was with the Mountain Star Medical Group up at St. Mark's Hospital. When I first showed up at the Senior Health Center, we were on paper charting, and you can imagine going to the doctor, your entire livelihood is in a manila folder with papers upon papers upon papers. And when you get into geriatric medicine, medications, medical conditions, phone calls coming in, you always had to find that paper chart. And I had 5 nurses that I would manage with 6 physicians, medical assistants, and I'm seeing the comparative of the way that we're going about our work here now with our current system, similar to the way that we were on paper up there. A lot of inefficiencies being run, and this was just in a 35-person department. Here we have a 1,100-person county all operating in a similar system like that. We implemented Epic, which was one, a very expensive, top-of-the-line electronic medical record system. But what we didn't realize by going that route, by implementing that hospital-wide, I had nurses that were spending 3 hours being clerks and filing papers and looking for charts and putting it back. With that electronic medical record system, everything was instantaneous. They were now able to access patient information, get it to the physician, get it back, all instantaneous, and actually spend more time doing patient care. And the way, like I said, the comparative is we're spending a lot of our time and resources just doing manual processes. And when I look at the 2 systems that are really leading the way here with ADP and Workday, one of the 2 systems provides more efficiencies in that process that we're not really able to see down the road what type of financial savings that's getting us, not only in the HR department. I mean, it's huge for the human resources here to do that, but for every end user in the county, for every employee, for them to be able to access their time card, whether it's through a mobile application or a computer, be able to punch in and out of time, accurate time card reporting. I mean, there's going to be dollar savings just in us getting accurate time cards throughout all of those employees here at the county. Being able to look at W-2s, being able to request time off from a mobile device, things like that. So that's an end user satisfaction type thing. So again, the comparative is my preference would be a system like Workday because it ties in all of those applications together, more of a seamless program, where ADP, they both offer the same functionality. They both have the same opportunities, the same, how would you say that? Applications within their program when it comes to recruitment, time payroll, time card editors, things like that. They both offer the same, but one of them actually is stitched the processes together to make it more efficient. So when you trickle that to the manager level, the supervisors, it's going to be a much more efficient process for them to, when an employee gives them a resignation, and that manager now needs to turn that around and get somebody in to hire into that position. One of those systems, being Workday, is going to actually tie that entire process together rather than have to still have, oh, I've clicked the button in the system like an ADP, now I need to email this individual. I have to know every step in the process to do that. I still have to follow up with human resources through an email or a phone call to find out where we're at in that, where Workday ties that all in, kind of incorporates the end user, the manager, all throughout that entire system. So my recommendation, or my hope is that you guys would recommend and support what the committee has determined Workday to be the more efficient, the more effective, more cost-effective system for the county and for our human resources department.
In your day-to-day life as an employee, obviously you're favoring the Workday. What specifically, it sounds like the flow of the program itself, having sat through them myself, is what saves you time. Would you have a guess on what type of time savings in your particular position you could envision with Workday over ADP?
You know, if we sat down and really tried to do a breakdown the time analysis, I'm sure we could come up with a number. But I just look at, even in my experience, I've only been here for 2 months, just seeing, having the different directors and the different managers having to call, Cammie's cell phone or call our front desk and just try to find out where something is at in the process. Hey, I put in this request for this new hire, this new employee. Where are we at on that? I want those questions to go away with. I would love for a manager just to be able to log into their system, know exactly where we're at in the system, know what approvals are going to be needed to approve a position to be open, know how many applicants that have applied for that position. And the recruitment module is another big sell. One of my goals is to see more talented and qualified employees looking for opportunities to work here in the county. And I do believe that the recruitment module that Workday provides is superior to what ADP provides. Now, the way I've kind of described it is ADP is good. ADP is a good program, but Workday is a great program. And if somebody was to go onto utahcounty.gov and try to look for a job here, the current process to apply for a job is not going to be very attractive to a qualified and talented individual.
Neither is our website.
Through just our website. They have to download a PDF, fill it out, download a supplemental questionnaire PDF, fill it out, and then email it to an individual or bring it into our office here. ADP and Workday both have recruitment modules, but one, what I saw was superior to the other. And if we had something on our website where people logged into that, it would be much more effective in allowing a talented and qualified individual to find employment here at the county, feel that we're keeping up to speed with at least our technology, and we're not going overboard, bleeding edge of technology, but something that's just user-friendly, and we're able to get a much more easier process for the end user. And that's just the recruitment side. As I said, with time management and all these other areas, it's a much better process for the end user. Again, ADP is good, and I'm not going to say it's a bad system, but I think Workday is great.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others?
Yeah, Ralph Clegg with the Health Department. I don't have a position on the current proposals.
That's what we're talking about.
But I
Public
do
comments
have
at
this
the
to
end.
say.
Oh, okay.
anything that can simplify the process would be great. Simplify it for our human resources people. There's so much involved in human resources anymore that if you get tied up with some of this information, you almost can't do your job. And same is true for our supervisors with the health department. And so anything that simplifies the process would be great and makes the process work better for everyone. Only cautions I have is that, as you know, the health department has quite a complex system with dealing with grants and contracts, and we have to account for almost 200 programs in a financial way, which includes salaries and benefits as the major part of that. And so we need to make sure that whatever we have in the contract, it specifies that information can be pulled out and put into the general ledger. What happened with the current system we have is, of course, they said that they could do it. Everybody, whenever you're talking to these folks, they all say they can do it, which is not always the case.
That guarantee ferry.
But in the current system, they said, well, we can do it, but then they could never really handle our timesheets. And so there had to be a translation system written by our IT folks to take the information and translate it into something that could be used in the general ledger. And as good as that was, the problem that created for us is that we have deadlines on things we have to do for our contracts and bills and the billings we have to do. And that took us right up against almost losing tens of thousands of dollars to get those translation tables written because of the time it took to get that done. And so that's something that needs to be considered. And if we have to go back and we have to pull it out manually and for our billings out of the general ledger and back to our timesheets, then we'll need additional staff to do that. So that's my only cautions. I'm all for anything that will help our human resource folks, because we've got some great folks here in the county. They deserve a program that works.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay.
A couple more comments.
You're coming again? Is this the last time? Or
Well, no,
three?
this is the last time. So the gentleman who was here is absolutely right. Whenever you have a lot of applications running, which you're using, there's a lot of detail on those things. And so the odds of replacing all those with like one big monolithic application, which is all things to everybody all at once, without lots of problems, is very, very slim. So usually what you do in this kind of situation is you just take one module at a time and say, if we replace this with this, will it work without breaking everything else?
Right.
Secondly, we've
That's what
evolved.
we're actually doing on this.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Secondly, in software, we've evolved to a point where our opinions are not a concern. Instead, what we do is we think about this and we say, is there a test we can set up, especially if we're evaluating a couple different things? Is there a test we can set up and then let the results speak and determine which is better?
Exactly.
And so you just think through all the tests, and then at the end, you just say, here's the data. And this is the proof we have. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Darren Murphy, Sheriff's Office. As probably the largest user of this system, I would like to echo what Ralph says. We have a lot of payroll issues, cost centers, et cetera, that we have to deal with. I would hope that you would consider the
I
recommendation.
think we need to leave the door open.
You can't shut the door. Yeah,
Well,
let's leave it
it's
open.
not for
Let's leave
us,
it open.
but I think for open meeting, we have to keep it open.
Yeah.
I would
Sorry.
hope that you would consider the recommendation of personnel in the program that they feel
let's
is
keep
the
it open.
best for the county. I think they're the ones that have the expertise to evaluate it. I know you've gone out to an RFP. I know you've looked at the different options that you have available. I would just want to recommend that as a user, we want to have something that's functional, that meets our needs, not like what we've had in the past quite some time. So,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Robert Baxter, Purchasing Manager. I would just like to add, kind of from a procedural perspective, I didn't have a vote. I was not on the selection committee.
We tried to give you one.
No, I think it was better that I didn't. I wanted to stay separated from that and sort of act more as a judge than as the jury. Having said that, now that the votes have been cast, had I been given a vote, I probably would have gone with ADP. However, in my opinion, looking at the rules and the process that's set in place for Utah County, we had a committee of 11 people. They made a decision 8-3, and they chose Workday. And I think that should be honored. I think we would have a difficult time justifying not going with that decision. I'm not a lawyer. I'd have to leave that to the attorneys to hammer that out. But I think it would be difficult to justify not going with that recommendation. So it's my recommendation as the purchasing manager that you accept the recommendation of the committee and go with Workday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't had enough time up here yet, so I figured I might as well come back up.
We thought you were going to tell us the application got approved from the Corps.
It hasn't been 60 days yet, or
We were hoping.
65 or 90.
Feels like it.
I just want to echo what the others have said. Being one of the larger departments and one of the more complicated ones in dealing with the cost centers, I think it's wise to go with the system that would work the best and go with the recommendation that HR has. As Darren mentioned, I think that they have the expertise in this field. I certainly don't, and I won't even pretend that I do. In talking with my folks that deal with it, they feel best about the Workday program. So that's just my 2 cents worth, and I'd recommend we go with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do
All
we
right.
dare close the public comment on this item?
Any others? Last chance? Going once, twice, closed. Okay. Let's pull it up here. I wonder if maybe if I can start.
Go ahead.
And we'll let people have an opportunity, and then we can discuss it as well. This process has been great. There's a couple of issues that are a little bit of concern to me. In the way of what an RFP process actually is trying to get to with what Robert said, Robert Baxter there. It is a recommending board. I know it says selection committee, but it does recommend to the commissioners a recommendation. It is not necessarily that is the selection, or else we wouldn't even be here. It'd just be done. And I think that in talking with council on that, they agree with that as well. And so and the beauty behind that is that we do get a lot of the users to take a peek at it and look at it and give advice, because this has been a roller coaster ride. I mean, for me personally, it has been here and over there. At some point in time, somebody came to me and said, I think there are some of the vendors who think that this is a done deal, and that is as far from the truth as I think we can get, because it was never, in my perception, it was never that. We went back and forth, and at one point in time I was over here, and then we came back. And so it was a learning process. But nevertheless, the selection committee has a role, and that is to look at the program and then make a recommendation. But then it has to come, because that's just a recommendation, not based necessarily on budget, not based on necessarily looking forward for the commission, in a forward-looking position, not putting on the executive hat. There's all those that have to come this direction, and that's the reason why it comes forward. So I wanted to thank all those who were a part of it. I mean, there were times we sat there, and I know I nodded off a couple times because you hear the same thing over and over, and you wonder where you're at in the process. But it was good to see the companies. We had again a great process, and I think in looking at, or as it was explained to me, the scores, they're close. I don't think there's a bad decision. I think we've got to a point to where we're looking at good decisions that are there for the county, and we're trying to look forward to it. So, with that, I know we got we asked them on a procedural basis to give us their best and final offer, which again for us as commissioners I thought was needed and necessary to get a better price, to get more knowledge on what they said they will do. And I think that's part of this process, is that we're trying to get the very best, the best price, because the money that we're spending is not our money. I mean, some little fragments of it is, as we pay taxes, but it belongs to the county, and that's part of the roles that we have as commissioners, is to put that executive hat on. So as it is close, and I think that again, it is going to be a good decision whichever way we go. And just for clarification up here, we, besides being in the meetings, in the selection meetings and talking afterwards and so forth, we come here. I have no idea. I have a general idea, I think, where people are going, but this is a conversation that is right here, raw and new, in how we're going to go. And I think for the most part, most people know that I have been leaning towards ADP, and for reasons that I would like to state, not just on the money side, although you can go back and forth on where they come out equal or where the value is on the money side, but because I think there is added value that also it doesn't translate into dollars necessarily, but it can. One of them is ADP has been in business for 68 years. They've been doing this a very long time. Workday has been in business for 12. ADP's implementation consultants have an average of 12 to 15 years experience. ADP has thousands of customers just like us, not just a handful here and there. Their service team has 18 years experience on average. Their product is flexible. I saw the flexibility in it as I watched their presentations to us. There's a lot of flexibility in their product, which I found helpful as we're going down, because as it was stated, they have a huge program. We asked over and over, how much of this are we actually going to use? We're going to have to buy the whole thing, but all the vendors who came up, there's only a certain amount that we're going to use, and some that we're saying we're only going to take this module for now or that module, but they're huge programs. But we're going to have to pay for even that expanse part of it. One thing that was of interest to me is that with ADP, we don't have to pay until it's done, until it's implemented. That has been a sticking point with our last program. I mean, we've been going through this process and spending lots of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even with our own costs of personnel. And so that's very appealing to me. It allows us to go through a budget process and actually put it into a budget, because of the time it's going to take to put implementation in place. And so we can put it into a budget and say, here we are with the budget, instead of saying we're going to have to reach into reserves or do something different. The training is not fee-based. When I look at the the training, and there's no extra charges to their service model. Whenever I look at, and I've looked, and I do them side by side, and that's what they say on ADP side. There's no extra charges. There's no fees on the fee base, but on Workday's, they tag hours and dollars and then a total. And there's extra charges that will come up if you go over. That's the reason why anytime on a table you put down the hours that they're allocating to it and the dollar amount per hour, is because if it's more than that, then it's going to be more. And so extra charges will be implemented with, possibly implemented with the Workday. Even after, this is again with ADP, even after implementation is over with and configuration is needed, it is at no additional charge. So we could be done with our configuration and maybe let down the road say, oh, we got to configure this a little more. There's no additional charge to that. ADP has an excellent contractual assurances. I read down through their assurances, and I read that one at the bottom there, and they have excellent contractual assurances to us. In the security realm, we talked. Neil mentioned this they're a tier 4, which is superior. And I mean, everyone we had some text going back and forth, and everyone has a possibility of being hacked here and there. But they have a tier 4, which is, I think, the highest. I don't know if it's different, but it's probably the highest that you can get in that realm. They also have reduced liabilities by providing, and we listed all those, the tax filings and reporting, wage garnishments, year-end W-2s, 1094s, 95s, the ACCA reporting and administration, disaster recovery, and then of course, we look at, and again, when I talk about price is always not just what's stated there, but there's the value price that comes along. And that's the reason why, and I just put it out there on the table, I have been always leaning, not always, because I've gone back and forth with some of the other vendors, but ADP stands out head and shoulders above what I see when it comes to implementation and ongoing costs and what they'll give in the added value that I think as we're going forward in the county, we have the opportunity to take advantage of.
Okay, so I'd like to make my statement. First off, the budget is roughly the same, or the cost is roughly the same, but budgeting is an interesting concept when you say this allows us to go through a budget process. Neither does, actually, because both have to be implemented before the time of the year. So we're going to have to do what we talked about in budget season, that is open a line item, and either way it's going to have to come from reserves, which the county has plenty of. But Commissioner Lee was right. He asked the same question to every vendor, and that vendor was, how much of this great product are we going to use? And to that is where I lean and favor Workday, because if you take out the commission, of the 8 people there, 7 of the 8 chose Workday. So to Commissioner Lee's own answer is, how much will people use? That comes back to buy-in. And if people have buy-in and see the need and how they're going to use it, and we have the tops of each department doing that, if they have the buy-in, then that's how you're going to get more use, and therefore the county's dollars will go further, the efficiencies will be there, the savings will be there, and the cost to the county, by the way, in what Workday has presented, they're the only ones that came with a tangible dollar figure that shows us how our inefficiencies currently would save us at a very conservative rate. And those numbers, when you total them up, are well over $1 million. And so they're the only ones that came and talked about actual cost savings. But going back to buy-in, when you have your end users who are saying buy-in, or we want to know how much they're going to use, the buy-in is so important, because that's the use. You know, when our public works and our sheriff's department and our health department are in there saying, oh yeah, we're going to use it here and it's going to use here, and they ask the questions of implementation, how this is going to work and how this is going to work, they see how the efficiencies help their programs. And part of the other cost of this is, the more buy-in we have, the better and more efficient this county is. That, quite honestly, over the few years, we slow the growth of actual employees to the county, because we become more efficient and able to work better on the taxpayers' dollars. So I support Workday for the sheer fact that 7 of the 8 people chose them, and those are the end users. The commissioners aren't the end users. The tools that the commission will use are the reporting factors that both have. And but financially, I want to see us get a program that more people will use. It's the same reason why we upgraded and switched and put everybody in the county on Office 365, and why we're switching for email, because we want the most efficient and better way for the whole county to provide. You know, when we talk about ADP being in business forever and ever, well, 15 years ago, maybe not quite so long, I was always harassed for buying a Macintosh. And everybody said, oh, do you like being part of the 4% of the marketplace? Well, I look pretty smart right now. So Workday could be Macintosh for all we know. Again, they have a proven track record. The flexibility that ADP offers comes at a price. And so I have a cousin who works in the industry, and this is what he sent me based on that flexibility and the additional costs that ADP does. For example, the time tracking that ADP does, they do not actually own it. It's part of the Enterprise E-Time, which is Kronos Workforce. So in other words, they are buying somebody else's system, which is fine, but you know, that's not the case in Workday. Leave balances, ADP does not own this either, assuming that ADP will be the system of record. Kronos will have to get that from ADP, and then we have another link in the chain. So again, going back to the liability, what concerns me on that is all of a sudden ADP has another out, a contractual obligation on with the guarantee ferry. ADP is well known for payroll, and they are fantastic at it. But I've never heard of anybody say, oh yeah, they're a human resource company. That's concerning to me. They also have additional fees for this company. For the W-2s and 1099s, and I don't know if this is standard, but they have a $40 base charge, and then they have additional charges when they do the W-2s. They have a $10.50 base charge, but then they add up for year-end processing. They have an additional $5.50 for every W-2 they have to reprint for you, or if they have to remanufacture something, it's $2.50, or if it's this and that. So for that, they give me great pause at their contract creep with everybody that I've had dealings with them. So the trusting of that. And then going back to our other earlier conversation, the ACA reporting, it is a big deal. My only question is why we contacted the accountant for Wasatch Mental Health and not the HR director, because Todd, although he is a very smart guy with numbers, he's like Brian and Deneen, they know numbers. And not that they don't know HR, but we have an HR expert, Ralph over there, who we trust. And so I would have hoped that we would have maybe asked that question to him as far as maybe that system, and not an accountant who looks at it. So other than that, well, I'm not saying you didn't. I'm just saying we said Todd. Yeah. So, but Todd's thoughts on the matter don't matter to me necessarily as an accountant. So, yeah.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank those who participated in the selection committee for their time and dedication, for their thoughtfulness in the process, and for their feedback. It's been very informative to me, and I greatly appreciate it. As was stated, I was one of the 3 people that voted for ADP out of that particular process. The things that I found attractive about that particular option was the longevity of the company and their experience in the private sector. The newness of Workday to the private sector caused me a little red flag and concern and holdback. I also liked ADP's analytics from my job standpoint. As the chief administrator over all of the county, I felt like they delivered me some stuff that was a little bit better than what Workday was able to deliver me. But I also recognized the seamlessness of Workday and how the product flowed together very well, and that was a crucial component of what we were after, was that ability to improve the efficiencies of the county. And that's something that's very important to me, is that we do things that help us operate as a government entity more efficiently, and in the end provide a better product to our citizens. The breaking point for me originally, a week ago without question, was the cost, specifically the implementation costs that were there. I'm grateful that we went through and took a little extra time to go back and have them bring forth some final numbers for us. As we roll implementation and annual subscription costs into a 3-year and a 5-year particular process, obviously the numbers get really close, and at a 5-year mark, Workday actually becomes more financially a less burden on the county. And I sincerely hope that as we go through the contract negotiations, from my standpoint, that would be strong direction I give, that we look at this as a longer term type of contract with protections built into the county to get out of that. Despite my own personal preferences there, my number one goal is to make sure that this product is used. I am unwilling to spend taxpayer money if the workers of this county are not going to use the product. And based off of the feedback I've gotten today, it's very evident to me that the workers in this county, by a large majority, prefer Workday and they're going to use it. So I'm going to call on you, if I support this Workday effort, to make sure you uphold your end of the deal, that you use this product, that you remember that this is the taxpayer dollars at work, and that the reason we're doing this is to make sure we can be more efficient as a county and to deliver a better product at the end of the day to those who pay us. And of course, that's the taxpayers. Each of us are taxpayers, but it's the greater citizens of Utah County. And I'm willing to accept that recommendation, and I'm seeing some nodding heads out there that you'll give me that commitment. And based on that, I'm willing to set some of my own personal preference aside a little bit to do what I feel is in the greatest good from the worker's perspective to deliver a good product to the citizens of this county. And I'm willing to do that primarily because we were able to go through a negotiation process that brought the cost of this product very, very competitive, where before it was out of line. And I would have not even had a debate on that if we weren't able to do some shifts, especially with the implementation costs there, and looking at it in a long-term perspective as a financial investment in the human capital that we have at Utah County.
Great. Good discussion. I think that's gives us a good sense of a direction and where we're going. I wonder if we could have conversation now on what we would expect to be negotiated. I think direction is what Rob is looking for. If we could have some of that discussion, I think that'd be very advantageous.
So Rob, obviously from my perspective, our direction, as far as a negotiation standpoint, I want to make sure we pin down, the year status on that and provide protection to the county for the opportunity to get out, but make sure that we're looking at this as a long-term investment so that we're securing that long-term savings that's offered there. I would also like to negotiate very, very aggressively on the protections, on the liability protections, and make sure that we do all we can to incorporate those into the contract, because I think Commissioner Lee brought up an excellent point, that was something where ADP was stronger, and I would like to leverage in those negotiations to make sure we do all in our power to make sure we get some of those liability protections built back in to take some of that burden and away from the county and build in some protection. Those would be, as far as my directions, two of the things that I would love to see in the negotiation portion of this particular motion that we're going to go through today.
And I can agree with that.
Yeah, I can too. I'd just like to add one more, and that is potentially an additional negotiated rate of reduction on implementation in case we add more staff to help, so that it's not a fixed cost and all of a sudden they come back and say 25 people or what you guys agreed to or whatever, so that we nail down those numbers. And if we add staff that they weren't planning on, for example, in the IT department or wherever, that we're able to have some greater cost savings.
I can do that. And as I mentioned, I was planning on putting in the agreement all the way out through that 10-year cycle at our option at that point. So.
And I appreciate that.
Okay, and on my, if it's agreeable, if I can get to it, hang on one second. Again, looking at the implementation, and let's just start with implementation. It really does give me pause when we have an hourly rate and an hour attached to it. I know what that means. I'm wondering if this is their best and final price on implementation, if we could negotiate that out in the way of the hourly rate. Maybe they're trying to show
Yeah, and
value.
that's what I was alluding to, is
Okay.
that table.
Okay, if
Yes,
we,
I'm
yeah,
with you
you're
on
with,
that.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
If
that's
we
a
could,
good
if we
question,
could
Zach.
eliminate the hourly rate and then also
So there's
the
not
hours
to
on there.
exceed or,
Yeah, that we have the cost. The cost is a fixed cost
Fixed
for
cost.
implementation, and it will not exceed that cost. And then I think there was, let's see if I could get down here. Oh, that was part of it, because I do see on here, it says all change orders will be calculated based on the rates above. And of course, I know, and the reason why I'm sensitive to change orders, because I've lived in that world for a long, long time.
Oh, we have too.
Yeah, I know. And so the reason why, the sensitivity.
especially those of us on the dispatch board.
Yeah. So my sensitivity to change orders when they're written in there like that is that if we have a negotiated price, we take out the time, we take out the hours on that thing. I mean, it's an implementation that's gonna happen in that time frame. The change orders then become mute to a certain extent because we're gonna get the project done. And if we would be, because sometimes you'll bid a project low to make your money on the change orders.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
and
Yes.
and
That's
then
happened.
others come in and they say, I'm handling the whole thing, and this is the cost, and there is not going to be any change orders because I've done the homework on it. So if you could negotiate on that too.
Especially
and-
where their implementation was almost double the other. We're hoping
Yeah,
that's a
and
not to
I
exceed.
think that the only issue with change orders is if we change the scope of our project.
Oh, that's-
Let's say, for
that's
example, we want to
understandable.
add general ledger
Yes, yes,
situation.
that's totally
in the
different.
project.
Well,
That
we
would
were
be
already assured our general ledger concerns are already addressed. That was
I agree,
like
but what I'm
question
saying, if
1,
we
2,
want to-
3, 4, and
To
5.
add their financial component into
Yeah,
our situation.
because that's totally out of
It
scope.
is.
But within
It
the
is.
scope, this is the dollar amount, this is what we're at, and if they're willing to agree to that,
I'm
that
sure
will,
that
that will
within
lessen.
those assurances, I can work through that. If it's going to be, we change our scope, then there might be some concerns over that.
Some of the other concerns I have will just come with, probably with departments. I think they've been, been expressed. And
I understand as well with Workday with Workday and Collaborative Solutions, it's kind of a pay-as-you-go implementation,
Yeah.
meaning that it's not going to be a lump sum immediately. It's going to be as they've gotten work done. They're going
Right.
to so it'll be over time.
Right.
I would hope. Because
Well, and that was my reason for the budgeting, because we're going to have to pay as we go, and they're going to ask for payment in.
Sure, but
July or August.
some advantage of that though is that kind of like we do with other departments, we can kind of pay for that and then adjust our budget towards the end of the year to cover the deficit if you want, or something along those lines. And Brian can work with you on. work
I
on
mean,
that
if you
issue.
could negotiate, I don't know if it's,
Right.
if you could negotiate
Yeah.
that to get us into payment where we actually go through a budget process, I think, for me, that would be helpful.
Sure.
So that we could actually put it into a budget instead of trying to
And
open
let
up the
Brian
budget.
and the need monitor
Yeah.
with us.
That would be
very
helpful.
helpful.
Agree?
Second.
Agree, okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
See what I can do.
So, again, I just.
You
a
claim to have
good-
never lost, so
good
we're
ch-
expecting all of
I
this.
haven't said.
this has been a.
I don't like to lose, is what I've said.
Good choices, in there, good healthy discussion.
You can bring in Paul. Paul's never
Differences
lost.
of opinions are fine, and I think this has been good for
I
us
think we say that either,
to
but-
work through.
Thank you.
So if there's anything else?
Nope.
Could we work on a motion then?
I will move that we accept the selection committee recommendation of Workday for the new HRIS, Human Resource Information System for Utah County per request for proposal 2017-1, and authorize the county attorney's offer to enter in contract negotiations with a vendor, heavily considering the recommendations of negotiation as mentioned by the commissioners.
Second. Do we need to state that vendor instead of a vendor?
No, he did.
I did.
He did.
Okay.
He did.
Stated.
Okay.
A question for you in between the vote on that. What happens, he seconded.
I did.
What happens if in these negotiations, some of the things that we're putting in there on term-wise don't come about?
And we can go back to
Then I'll
ADP.
bring
Then
it
we
back
have to
you.
come, we have
I'll
to
bring
come
it-
back.
I'll bring it back to you.
Come back to us, okay.
Yeah, I'll bring it to you.
I want to
I'll
make sure
bring
that
to
was
you-
understood. I kind of
Yeah,
generally
because
understood
we can
that.
go back
I'll bring you what I've got, and I'll tell you where it's deficient, if it is,
On any
on anything.
any of the
that
negotiations.
We work through, and, and I'll approach all these subjects with
Right.
them, and then we can see where we land.
Okay. So
I'll mention the emphasis that you guys had on, in this meeting, how it was a close vote. Honestly, I think we had a 2-1 the other way before.
A
That's
week ago, you did.
Yes, we did.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's kind of, I'll mention
We
those
didn't
kind of things.
vote.
We didn't vote, but we had 2-1, kind of, it was going the other way. Up until
It wasn't 2-1 because I actually told you in the office I would support them.
Yeah, I know. I know. I meant.
That's 3-0.
So, Commissioner, let me just rephrase that. We were a preference.
Yes, please.
For the other way. Thank you. Thank you for correcting
Okay.
that.
And just for clarification on the motion, then it would be subject to reaching an agreement with regard to the contract.
Yes.
If that
Yes.
doesn't
If
occur,
that could
then
be
we will move
stipulated in
Yes.
the
on.
motion?
Yep.
Okay.
Do
So
you need me to
stipulate.
stipulate that and restate, or are we good there?
No, I think that's fine, just to,
Okay.
that will be part of the motion.
Yes.
That-
Yeah, you're
that
not
is.
approving anything this today.
Right.
So,
We're just authorizing.
We're approving you to go work.
That's
Exactly.
okay, so we've got a motion and a statement with some stipulations in place. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
Thank you.
That's out of order. Just kidding. If you want to make a scene, you can come to the front and make a comment.
Oh, thank you for doing it.
You have to state your name, though, to actually be on the record.
Turn that camera on her. All of them.
All right. Okay, we're through that part. Now let's go to the closed meetings. What's in need?
We can strike 15 and 16.
Okay,
We need to set 17 and 18.
very good.
Motion to strike 15 and 16 from the agenda.
Second?
Get a motion and a second to strike number 15 and 16 from the regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals for today's date at this location, following the completion of the regular agenda and work session agenda items.
Second.
Sorry. That was a long. You're looking at your time?
I'm with you. I don't know that we should second and go to the, no.
Okay, we get a motion and a second to approve, to set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for professional competence or character of an individual. Stated number 17, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0.
I move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation for today's date at this location following completion of regular agenda and work session agenda items.
Second?
I've got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 18 on the regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. We do have a work session, 2 work session items. I know one's here is the railroad. Okay, we got both. So Laura, if you'd come up first, she's with the Jordan River Commission. She's the executive director, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the Jordan River Commission and what it does and how it's beneficial to the
Thank
county.
you very much.
Can we kill the front lights for her presentation? Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say thanks, and I apologize for the time mix-up last week, but I'm happy to be here now and to have a bit of your time. Is that? It's warming up. It's warming up. Okay. And to advance the slides, do I just tell you when I'm ready?
You can tell me and I would be happy.
Okay, perfect. So every year we go around to all our member governments, give a brief update on the work that we've been doing, and also I wanted to take some extra time with you all to answer any questions you have about the Jordan River Commission. I know there's been some question about the value the county gets out of participating in the commission, and I want to make sure that we're answering your questions and hopefully be able to convince you to stay as a member of the commission. Next slide, please. So we were created.
Can I clarify your
yeah,
point just
please.
real quick?
Yeah.
We see the value in the Jordan River Commission.
Excellent.
We just wonder why it's not the membership from the cities that are there rather than the county
The county
representing
as
the
a
cities.
whole.
That's the clarification.
Perfect. Okay. We'll get to that. In 2008, Envision Utah published this document, the Blueprint Jordan River. It was a visioning document, a long-range master plan for the river corridor. And if you'll go to the next slide, this is me standing at the Jordan River Narrows, which is just about the point of the mountain. And you can see all the various different stakeholders that I can identify in just that one image. Obviously, it's a bit of a cat herding process, and having one organization on board to help keep everyone moving in the same direction is our purpose, really. Next slide, please. So the commission was created in 2010, the very end of 2010. Utah County was one of the founding members of the commission. And we have been brought about to help facilitate implementation of that vision. This last year, we're pleased to announce that we've had 6 new governmental members join the commission. Those are Midvale, Bluffdale, and then the 4 wastewater treatment facilities that discharge directly into the river. That brings us up to 14 out of the 17 municipalities adjacent to the river. We are missing Lehigh, but I'm presenting to them next week, and I think they're excited to join. We're missing Murray City, and I think we'll bring them on this year as well. And then Mill Creek City just incorporated as a brand new city. They're very excited. They just are trying to figure out what it means to be a city before they jump on board. And then, of course, we have all 3 counties, Utah, Salt Lake, and Davis, 6 districts, and 2 different state agencies. Next slide, please. Our organizational strategy, we meet every 2 years for a biannual strategic planning retreat where we talk about why do we exist, what are our goals for the next couple years, and we produce an annual work plan there. We have sort of a 3-tiered approach to the work we do. Physical projects, those are restoration projects, fundraising, things like that, education and outreach, and then technical assistance to our member governments. We feel like unless we're working in all 3 of those areas, we're not a sustainable organization, and that if we can find projects that overlap with 2 of those areas or more, they're really the highest priorities. As we're prioritizing our work, overall we try to do projects that have a corridor-wide benefit as a whole. So the vast majority of what we do are things that benefit the river corridor as a whole. And then we rotate around with specific projects based on the needs and requests of our member governments. Next slide, please. One of those regional projects that we do, we produce this document, Best Practices for Riverfront Communities. It's basically a toolbox for local governments. The Blueprint Jordan River document that I showed at the beginning is very long range. It's high level. It says plant native species, restore the river corridor environment, but it doesn't really say how or where or who or with what funding. And so this document is really the implementation tool that goes along with that. There are a lot of other resources we've produced that are on the screen as well, model ordinances. We have a great resource library, a GIS database, and then we have a 40-person technical advisory committee. Utah County is a big organization, so you have a big staff. Some of our member governments are smaller, and so they don't have the ability to bring on a civil engineer in-house for every project they do, or a landscape architect, or a restoration ecologist. And so our TAC is intended to be an extension of your staff whenever you have a project that comes up. Sometimes hiring a consultant for everything that you want to do, going through an RFP process, is cumbersome and burdensome, especially if it's only $5,000 or something. Using a member of our technical advisory committee or all of them saves you money. Next slide. We just started this river-friendly communities and river-friendly developments recognition program for cities and counties that adopt ordinances that create setbacks and protections along the river corridor. We recognize them with an award. Similarly, if there's a residential development or commercial development that comes in along the river, we have a checklist, and if they meet certain criteria, we would recognize their efforts with a river-friendly development award as well. That checklist can be a great tool for you internally too. If the county has property along the river corridor, I know you have a lot of parks. As projects are proposed, you can go through this checklist to ensure that the projects that you're doing as a county are respectful to the river corridor environment, minimizing adverse impacts, and then maximizing the value of the river as your projects take place. We do have a great, robust volunteer program. Since we started this in 2012, we've led 16,000 volunteer hours and raised over 100,000 in riparian restoration grant funding for the river corridor. You can see some other statistics up there. I have to say that your park staff does a fabulous job with the river corridor in Utah County. Whenever we have volunteer groups that request to work in this area, we have to work kind of hard to find things for them to do. So kudos to you all for taking really good care of the river corridor. That said, we do have a lot of interest in service projects in this area, and so we'd love to work with you to find places where we can put those volunteer efforts to good use and help you meet your goals as a county. Next slide. Another thing that we do, we have a best practices training series. We do 2 of these a year. We have a cap of about 60 participants, always a waiting list for these workshops. And the goal is really to bring in national experts to come in and help you and your staff do their work better and make educated decisions. So we have a workshop coming up in April about wetlands restoration and mitigation design. And so we're accepting registrations for that. Utah County and all of our member governments receive a discount on the registration funds, which is deeply discounted. We subsidize these with grants, so that makes it affordable for us to put these on and still give those discounts. They've been great, and we've gotten great reviews in them. Next slide, please. We have a great youth education program. Last year we engaged 260 students. I'm guessing probably 100 of those came from Timpanogos Elementary last year. They reached out to us and said, hey, we've got some great kids. We've got money for a bus. Can we come to the river corridor and will you tell us about the river and the ecosystem? So we had a great opportunity doing that and look forward to expanding it. Next
So
slide.
the grass they're standing in,
Yes, go back. I'm sorry.
is that grass, for example, that, because I was noticing that you planted so many tons of grass.
Yep.
Is that one of those areas that's been redone with?
Do you know, I am not certain in this image, to be honest. I think this photo is taken in Salt Lake City, I think. And it's a little difficult to tell, but along the river corridor, we have a mix of invasive vegetation
Right,
and
that's why I asked,
native.
because
Yeah.
part of the problem for water is really some of those invasive species that take a lot
Exactly.
out of the river as it's going, so I just wondered if that was a healthier one.
Yeah, Phragmites in particular is
Yes.
one of those I know you're familiar with. I'm not certain from this, and I'm not a botanist, and so it's a little tricky for me to tell, but we've been doing a lot of these projects, and I'll highlight a couple of them for you as we go along. Next slide, please. A lot of what we do is fundraising. In this sense, kind of the squeaky wheel gets the grease in some sense. And so the member governments that have reached out to us and said, hey, we've got a great project. Will you help us find some money to make this happen? We've been able to do that. So far, we have helped raise or secure $22 million for the river corridor. Those are various different bonds, private donations, legislative support. And I'll go through some of those in the next few slides, please. One of those we just were able to secure with the help of Salt Lake County voters $2.1 million for implementation of a water trail and master plan. We've secured some additional funding to extend the master planning process to include both Utah counties and Davis counties as well. And so this is a great project. We have a lot of calls from scout groups that want to go out, families that want to explore the river corridor, and having better facilities along the river will facilitate that. Next slide, please. We helped raise $3 million for restoration of Pioneer Crossing Park. This is a historic site, and it's said to be the place where the pioneers first crossed the Jordan River to settle the west side of the Jordan River. So it's kind of a unique area. Next slide, please. Our biggest win recently is $1.23 million appropriated by the state legislature for this lovely bridge. You can see it's 1,200 feet long. It's about a $6 million bridge. It has been the bottleneck for completion of the Jordan River Parkway Trail for probably 20 years. And it has literally been a dollar here, a dollar there, piecing it together to fund this great project. Once this is completed, the entire Jordan River Parkway Trail will be completed. It connects on either end to the Murdoch Canal Trail, the Provo River Parkway Trail, the Utah Lake Trail, and then on the north end, Legacy Parkway, Denver and Rio Grande. All together, we have a connected trail system, as soon as this is finished, and construction started yesterday, of over 120 miles from Ogden all the way down to Provo. I've done some research. I think this is the longest continuous paved trail in the United States. So we are planning a very big party to celebrate the completion of this, and it's one of those situations where and when the trail is complete, it benefits us all, even though this is one specific location. Next slide, please. We've been working with Saratoga Springs, who's a member of the commission. We were able to give them $2,500 for a cultural study and help them raise $21,000 for some boat ramps, access points along the river corridor. So we're excited about that. Next slide, please. Another regional project, we've been doing a wayfinding signage plan. These are some samples of the signs that will be included. We've found some grant funding to fund implementation of this, and the whole signage plan includes all 3 counties in the entire river corridor. Next slide, please. Puncture vine, this is another invasive weed. If you have ever gotten a flat bicycle tire riding on the Jordan River Parkway Trail, this was probably the culprit. As the seeds harden and dry, they get these sharp, sharp thorns on them that are just notorious for puncturing bicycle tires. You can also see a little insect in this image. That's a puncture vine weevil, and they are animals that eat nothing but puncture vine. So we have been doing...
So we need more of those?
Yeah, we call it a biological agent, a biological control. We've had 5 years of grants now to buy and release these bugs, and there is a pretty good puncture vine problem right at about the point of the mountain. I don't know that it's drifted further south into Utah County, but controlling it so that it doesn't is a really key goal. We engaged a bunch of volunteers last year, released 25,000 weevils, the point of the mountain being one of those locations. We expect to continue this work into the next few years. Each one plant can produce between 500 and 2,000 seeds, and they spread really quickly. So it's a key goal and a barrier to use of the Parkway Trail. Next slide, please. This is another one of those restoration projects that I mentioned. You can see it was completely choked off with invasive vegetation. We've cleared that out, planted a whole bunch of new trees, and we worked with a lot of students to make this project happen. West Valley City requested that we assist with this project. This is a stormwater detention pond. Whenever a city calls us, or a county calls us, and says we have a problem area that it's just not quite meeting its full potential as a community resource, we can go out and seek grants like we did for this to help make projects happen. Next slide, please. And I'm just to my last couple slides here. I wanted to give you a quick breakdown on our financials. 50% of our income comes from member government fees. Utah County contributes $10,000. Right now, that's about 6% of our member government fee contributions. The other 50% of our income comes from federal and state grants and charitable contributions. We have a 4-person staff. Our payroll expenses are about 44%, and then some additional operational expenses. You can see there, grants and the projects that we do really take up the majority of our funding. Next slide, please. So if I could just bullet point out a few key points on why I think participating in the commission is helpful to us and why we'd love to have you there. Really what one city or county does affects all the others. Rivers, weeds, wildlife, water quality, they don't follow political boundaries. As we know from algal blooms in Utah Lake, it's a big regional issue. You have the opportunity to be recognized as a leader among your peers and among others. Like I mentioned, you do a fabulous job taking care of your section of trail. I'd love to continue to highlight you for that. A lot of times, I think the value of the commission is when you need it. You have political representation when you need it. Right now, I know Commissioner Lee has been in on some of these emails, but we've been talking about some proposed homeless shelter sites along the river corridor in Salt Lake County. And a couple of our member governments would be the recipients of those if it were to be located there. And the commission is able to step up and provide representation on these issues when those issues arise. Sometimes you don't need it until you need it. Investments in any part of the river corridor enhance the whole experience as a whole. We have the opportunity for assistance with funding local projects and priorities, and frankly, it all really comes down to the belief that we're in this together, and we're showing our commitment to Utah's tradition of collaboration and working together, and we feel like you're a very valuable partner. We'd love to be able to continue to keep Utah County as a member of the commission and work with you specifically to identify some goals that you all have for your section of the river corridor, how we can help you make those happen. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And thanks for your time.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, please.
How many miles do we have in Utah County of river?
So, you know, I don't know the exact mileage.
I don't know if Richard knows. Do you know, Rich? 9? Okay, 9 miles. I know it's short. I've actually floated that section. Interesting experience.
Yeah, it is.
That was a long time ago, and they actually would put barbed wire across the river, and it was electrified, and we found out in a
really?
kind of a shocking way.
Nice. Well, I hope that's been corrected.
I hope it's corrected too.
And thanks for surviving.
Let me know
that.
if it's not.
And so I know right now we participate at a $10,000 level. How is that price level allocated? Is it based on miles of the river that you go
Sure.
through, or I'm just curious?
For the cities, we have a formula. So we took an arbitrary number of, and I envision you to set this number, but $100,000, and they divided that among the various cities by 1/3 geographic area, 1/3 linear river frontage, and 1/3 population. So that's how the city's contributions are calculated. The counties are not quite so formula-based. We have 3 counties, obviously. We have Utah County at $10,000, Davis County at $5,000, and Utah County contributes $40,000.
Salt Lake, you mean?
Salt Lake.
I'm sorry. Yes, Salt Lake County contributes $40,000. Yeah. So it's relatively proportional to the length of the river corridor in each of those counties. I can't say that it's tied specifically to that formula, but we could certainly go back and renegotiate that.
Well, I was just curious on it because I know it goes through Davis County, but right there, kind of at the end.
Yeah, it does.
As it kind of fans out and goes everywhere, and I was curious at where that price point was actually picked, and I was told how long is the river altogether?
It's about 50 miles. Yeah.
Is that it?
Uh-huh.
Even with all the winding?
The trail
Is
is
it not
45 miles, but the river is about 50, 51.
Is that river miles or is that straight miles?
I think that's linear river miles.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Yeah. So as it meanders and wiggles, it's been straightened in a number of sections, and so it's a pretty straight shot in most spots.
Okay. And then also with Lehigh potentially coming in,
Yeah.
which I think is great since they touch right there. And this is kind of one of the discussions that we've been having, is that how does that, if they're there, and Saratoga Springs is there as well, right along that
Sure.
river area. I saw that map where you're identifying where the people were, the players were at that one spot when you had the
Yep.
hood on.
Yep.
And in Utah County was clear on the back. I
Yeah.
could see the county line was clear up there. Now we do have some river trail that goes down there as well, and
Some great parks.
we've seen that. But could we get the same advantage with Lehigh and Saratoga Springs being a part of this and maybe helping them out, or?
Do you know, I think that's a good question. I think it really comes down to, the roles that you all play. So I know the county manages the trail and some large parks like Willow Park. So obviously you're a landowner, you have a vested interest there as well. The cities, I think, have a different perspective because they're talking about land use along the sides of the river, what happens there, contributing quality of life to their specific communities. I think the county plays a unique role as a regional entity, and being a leader for your community, for your county, and all of the cities here by being part of the commission is a good message to share. In terms of the advantage that you can get specifically in terms of a kind of a dollar for dollar return on what you do, I would welcome an opportunity to sit down with you and say, what would you like to do at Willow Park? Would you like some new boat launches there? What would you like to do along the trail? Is it tree planting? Is it a major bank stabilization project? Those are roles that typically fall to a county, and we would love to sit down and work with you about what projects could happen, what your vision is for the river corridor. Another aspect of that would be marketing. I think it's a big economic development driver to say we have this world-class trail, the longest trail in the United States, right here in our county. And it's a great employment amenity, and we think that the more that we can all work together to enhance this river corridor, the better you all can leverage that for economic development for your region. So I know that's not a direct question, but we'd love to work with you on what your goals are and help you make them happen.
And last, I've asked others, kind of their perspective, even up in Salt Lake County and they said one of the strengths that you have personally, and this is a compliment to you, is the ability to go out there and fund projects and to get some of the, state or federal funds or whatever it is to fund projects. And so my question would go along the lines of, I noticed the one for $21,000 for a boat ramp for Saratoga Springs. Have we engaged with you in the past on projects, or we've been kind of silent?
I have not had a real direct working relationship with a lot of Utah County in the past, and I would love to see more of that. I think maybe some of it has been people have really big jobs and a lot on their plate, and trying to find the right person who has the right focus is always as a goal. So we have not seen a lot of representation at our board meetings or our technical advisory committee meetings. We'd love to see more of that in the future. I think by being there, you learn more about what we're doing, hear about some other opportunities, what other cities and counties are doing, kind of sparks some ideas. And just by being part of the conversation, it makes it easier to say, oh, you know what, we could do something like that in this one other place over here. And so that would be helpful, is greater participation, just in terms of people power.
Those are the questions I had. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, so you're Nathan Anderson,
I'm Nathan Anderson.
and you're with the Pacific Railroad,
Union Pacific Railroad.
talking about rail safety.
That's what I want to talk about.
Very good.
Because railroads are pervasive, and I don't know if you noticed, but there was a nice shot of the North Temple rail line in the previous presentation.
Yeah.
We're everywhere, and we want to talk about a little bit. I want to introduce myself. I'm the Director of Public Affairs, and I've taken over that role within the last couple of years. I've had a chance to interact with a couple of you on some other projects, but I want to introduce myself, let you know kind of what our public affairs team does and why we're here, and tell you a little bit about the rail safety efforts that we have going on. So by way of introduction, I've been with Union Pacific for 13 years. I spent a little over 10 years in our commercial team, so very familiar with the local area. I actually was based in our Salt Lake office for 7 years in our commercial team, and then for the last 2 have taken over this public affairs role. I deal with legislative activities. I deal with political activities in the 4 states I have responsibility for, being Utah being primary because I'm here, also Idaho, Nevada, and Montana. And then we deal with constituent services and public relations. So when there are projects, I know Commissioner Graves and I have had a chance to sit down and talk about projects down in Springville. When there are rail projects, when there are rail issues, rail
Springville
concerns.
and Spanish.
Springville and Spanish. Can I say Southern Utah County?
Yes.
Is that appropriate?
Absolutely for me.
Okay. And so I think that it's anyway. My goal is to make sure that you know that I am available if you have concerns or questions, or if your constituents have concerns or questions, and how to go about contacting me and or addressing the railroad in case of any kind of concern or question.
Do you still do your the rail line or the rail travel where you have that double decker and you go all the way to the top of the mountain for lunch and then come back? I was on that.
We have done that in the past, and so we did a shorter version last year. We went from Grant Tower, downtown Salt Lake, what's called the intermodal terminal, to American Fork, and then we went to Tooele, out to Warner, which is the industrial park there. We did another trip the next day out to Warner, and then up to Ogden. So we haven't done one down to Thistle. We did one down to Thistle at Spanish Fork.
That's the one I went on.
It's a great ride. It's beautiful. We do one of those about every 2 years, depending on when that set of cars is available to us here in this area.
Okay.
if you don't have any other questions at this point, I'd like to kick off the presentation. I want to talk about our safety focus. You are local to our Provo yard, so I can talk a little bit about Provo operations, how signal systems work, and then one of our initiatives is our community event notice. And I'm happy to make this as dialogue friendly as you want. I'll go through the slides. If you have questions, just pop up. Next slide, please. Safety is our number one priority. If you listen to any of our meetings that we have, or if you listen to an earnings release or anything like that, we routinely discuss safety first. In fact, in meetings that we host, we start with a safety briefing. Where are we? What are we doing? How do we be safe doing that? And what to do in a case of an emergency. Our headquarters is in Omaha, Nebraska, so things like spring weather bring tornadoes and hail and thunder, and we need to make sure we know how to respond. What you'll see there, actually, let me back up one. Yep. What you'll see there really quickly is 3 key areas of safety that we monitor, and if you'll notice, if you can imagine a trend line in each of those 3 areas, you'll notice that it flattens out as it moves to the right. We have more control and ability to train with our own employees than we do with all of the rail equipment that we deal with. We only own about 60,000 rail cars, about 8,500 locomotives. At any given time, we'll have 300,000 cars on our system. So, the 240,000 cars that aren't ours, we don't have as much control of those. We have not done all of the maintenance on those, so we have issues. And then crossings where we interface with the public. And those are that's an area where we'd love to see more improvement. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But about every 3 hours, a person or a vehicle is hit by a train in our country. And we aim to stop that. We want to get that to 0. Go ahead. Here's a perfect example why. If you'll note, you can't see it, but it's in the pop-up there. That tanker truck has a placard on it that says, "This vehicle stops at all railroad crossings," except for that one. Our crossings are maintained to a standard that is safe for a prudent driver, pedestrian, or bicyclist, or any motor operator. And that's a challenge for us because they don't all always act prudently. Go ahead. So to counteract that, we have a 3-pronged approach that you see there: education, enforcement, and engineering. We partner in the education front with a group called Operation Lifesaver that's a nonprofit. It was actually started in Union Pacific's North Platte, Nebraska yard as a volunteer exercise and has become its own entity. Union Pacific is a major funder of that. UTA locally, some of the short line railroads, the Genesee and Wyoming, who also operates here, is also a sponsor. They sit on the board locally. And we do, through Operation Lifesaver and our own UP Cares activities, we talk a lot with community groups, churches, schools, driver's ed classes about how to be safe around railroad tracks. And the key is obey the signs, obey all the traffic laws. We have our own police force. We work closely with state, local enforcement to address those kinds of issues of people not responding to the signs. And then engineering, as you see there, a signal system with lights and gates that are implemented to enhance safety at a crossing. Go ahead. And you may ask what the signal system is or how it works, and we can have a more in-depth discussion on that if you'd like. But basically, when a train enters the system, the circuit is closed, and the system goes into effect. The first thing that happens is bells and lights. Second system is you will see
That's when you speed up, if you're that non-prudent driver.
Do you remember the 1980 movie Starman? Green light, go. Red light, stop. Yellow light, go very fast. That was his interpretation of
I just laugh because I see this all the time at some of the crossings that we talked about almost a year ago now.
Yeah. So the state law says that if the lights are flashing, it's illegal to proceed.
Right.
Right. And a prudent driver will make sure that there's room to proceed before they do go through. Unfortunately, a lot of times what we do see is someone trying to beat the train.
Yeah.
A moving train can be as long as 2 miles long, millions of tons. It'll take that train a mile to stop if it's going 55 miles an hour. If you're trying to beat a train through a crossing, that is a very high-risk engagement. In the Provo area, we have multiple railroads that operate. We have Union Pacific Railroad, of course. You also have the UTA that operates in the same corridor on their own tracks. The signal systems are integrated. You have as well the Genesee and Wyoming, who's also sometimes known as the Utah Railway, who operates as the Burlington Northern's agent, and then the Burlington Northern operates some through trains coming out of Denver through through Spanish Fork Canyon and up into the Salt Lake Valley. Commissioner, do you have a question?
No, I was
Okay.
just
All right.
paying attention.
Okay. I want you to take a look at that sign. If you've never seen one before, make note the next time you cross a crossing. That's here in Provo on that's either 7th or 9th West and 6th South. That kind of sign is on every crossing. There's a phone number that will tell you whose train it is. That one happens to be a UTA-owned and managed signal. That railroad sign you can cross, and that will alert dispatch of a problem. There's a broken down car, the signal's not functioning correctly, that's been going and there's no train. And that happened a lot this winter with the amount of snow we got in January, the amount of salt that was going onto the roads. That saline solution created a closed circuit, and the system started to go in malfunction because the signal was closed, the electrical signal was closed.
And we saw that in Salt Lake, didn't we? I think it was a UTA.
That was a little bit of a different situation, but but it was a result of dealing with the salt in the system and the malfunctioning crossing arms. And it was a UTA. It was a UTA arm.
Hit that trucker.
Yeah, it was UTA arm. It was UTA signal and UTA train that hit that FedEx truck. It was, yes. But that number is the UTA emergency number. We have our own. It's on our sign. I can share that with you as well. Go ahead, next slide. There's another example. That one happens to be in Idaho, but it's our sign with our number on it. Go ahead. So the last thing I want to tell you about, commissioners and anyone else who's interested, is our community event notification. We want nothing more than for your community activities to be happy, fun, safe, exciting experiences for your citizens, for your constituents. We have an 888 number. If you are having a 5K, a bike ride, an event of some kind.
A charity golf tournament.
Is it cross the railroad tracks? Is it?
Some of our balls do.
Guilty as well. Yeah. Anything that would bring people near or across tracks. We have some communities, not so much here in this part of town, but for example, the Lehigh Rodeo. We actually open up a closed crossing for access to the Lehigh Rodeo. What we've asked the city of Lehigh and the organizers of the rodeo to do is beforehand to call this number and say, here's the date, here are the parameters. And we have an agreement to do that. That's not a problem. Everything's taken care of. But what we're saying is, as opposed to calling a local manager on his cell phone, hoping he gets the message, making sure all the plans are in place, call this number. It goes to our Omaha 24/7 response management communication center, at which point a series of actions go into place whereby we take the responsibility to get back to the caller and say, here's how we're going to help you have a safe event. For example, we're working right now with Tour of Utah, the bike race, to make sure that everything is set up so that they understand how to be safe when they're crossing a couple of at-grade crossings, meaning the road and the rail are at the same level. Go ahead and hit the next advance. You can just see there just some activities, and I will leave you, if it's okay, I will leave you each a copy of this flyer. I can make it available electronically for you to share broadly with your citizens. Bottom line is, we may not stop the railroad, but we will give you instructions, or we will give you counsel on how to do whatever it is that you're going to do, and do it safely, and not interfere with railroad operations. And railroads, kids love them, people love them, photographers love them. Unfortunately, just last week we had a fatality in Texas of a young woman